Another Ants on a Rock video. Welcome to the Ant Corner. Another episode of my massive multi-species vivarium. We finally got a crab. Episode 4. Welcoming in our vampire crab. I've been calling him Mr. Krabs from that lovable kids TV show that we all know. These crabs have been really understudied by scientists, although it is starting to increase now. They have been kept by hobbyists for many years though, but in the science world there's still many discoveries to be made. It was only recently discovered that they're actually from Southeast Asia. Until recently, scientists didn't even know where they had come from. They've spread quite far and wide, living in a variety of habitats, and some even live on the land completely, not needing water, which is really rare for a type of crab. Some facts about it is that in captivity they tend to live about 3 years, although scientists are not sure how long they can live in the wild. All species of vampire crabs are currently under the same genus. This might change soon, as scientists are making more and more discoveries and discovering the wide variety of crabs and habitats. They might well change it soon, but we're waiting to see what happens on that front. As you may notice, this crab lives in fresh water, which again is slightly different for crabs. It's only a few millimeters, maybe an inch big, a couple of inches big. It's not a very large thing. When you think of crabs, these are very small crabs. They're also mainly nocturnal, which means they mainly come out at night, although I have seen them out during the daytime several times. You'll have to ignore my bad filming and reflections at this point. He's quite a good hunter, as he scurries about deep in the pond looking for the supply of bloodworm that I put in there weeks and weeks ago. He also eats mosses and pretty much anything, being an omnivore scavenger. They have a really varied diet. Now I think this one is still quite young, as the colours aren't that bright yet, but you can clearly see that the claws are a slightly different colour to the body. The claws should develop into a deep red and the body should turn into a black, I think, making this a red devil vampire crab. So it'll be really interesting to see that as it molts over time. Like I said, these crabs do molt, which is their way of growing, much like many insects and arthropods. For this, they will often dig a little burrow in the sand or mud around the pond where it's nice and moist and shed in there. This will keep them safe and away from other predators. These crabs being so small, they are eaten by many different things out in the wild. Birds and other fish quite easily, quite readily take them. So really, in this tank where it is one of the alpha predators, it should live a life of luxury. I'm yet to see how it interacts with the ants, but I have a feeling they might just avoid each other, both being at the very top of the food chain. Again, I apologise for my reflections. Immediately after putting the crab into the vivarium, he went and had some food and went and found some hiding places. He's now found several different hiding places and caves that I've built and he's made himself, including the pump area. So I'm a little bit worried about what he might do to the pump, but as of yet it hasn't been an issue. But we'll wait and see in another episode. Now I'm going to need you to help me name this crab. I mean, we could keep him as Mr. Krabs, but we don't actually know if he's a Mr. or Mrs. Krabs. We could just call him Krabs. It's entirely up to you. Put a suggestion in the comment section. If you like someone else's suggestion, leave a like on it, and in the next episode I will unveil the one which got the most likes or attention, and I'm going to put Mr. Krabs in there to start it off. One other really cool, useful thing that's been happening with this crab is his ability to clean up. Eating decaying mosses and other bits and bobs around his pond, any insects that fall in are obviously going to be his prey. Also, the ants have started using the pond as a garbage area. It's quite awesome, and I've got a little bit of footage of that to show you. Some of them come right up to the water's edge and place it in gently. Some of them just drop the garbage from a height on the glass and it just falls into the pond. So at the moment there's quite a few empty cocoon cases and bits of old Mario worm around the pond, but I'm sure he will get to them eventually, or I'll just pick them out if they're becoming a problem. Moving on to a colony of Polyrhachis Dives, the Moorfolk. Gonna start you off with a couple of clips of them using the pond as a garbage site. I believe this is a emptied out piece of Mario worm that they're bringing over to the pond. They pretty much bring everything over here, no matter what size it is and how much of a struggle it is to get it all the way from the other side of the tank. But you know what ants are like, they never give up. Again, he will walk all the way around until he finds the right spot, instead of finding the easy route and just putting it down. I must apologise for referring to everything as a he. I know these ants aren't he's, they are worker ants, meaning they are she's. But it's just how I naturally speak, I just call everything a he. This worker here is carrying a cocoon case, and he's carried it along the grass, making his journey a little bit easier, not having to climb over all the mosses and rocks. And ready, steady, gone. Like I said before, the crab will most likely pick this up, as I have already seen it doing, and having a little nibble on it. I don't know what protein value it has, but it must have some kind of nutrition to it. Now, the Polyrhachis dives have been eating lots and lots and lots, and that is one of the keys to keeping this environment a safe and happy place for all my different insects, is basically ramming it full of food all the time, which means there is a constant supply of carbohydrates, meaning from the ant tower cotton candy stuff that I get from the ant lady. I highly recommend that. I'm going to show you a clip in a minute. All the insects in here absolutely love it. At this point in the video, I've just chucked in some flightless fruit flies, and there's also 2 large hoppers that they are slowly getting through as well. And I say slowly because normally they would devour at least one of those in a couple of hours, and the next by the time it would be night time, like a few hours after that. But these 2 have been here quite a while, which means they might actually be almost full for once, which is an absolute rarity. But the other insects in here will come and have a go, as you'll see in a minute. Now, as you may expect, the Polyrhachis dives can be quite aggressive, but they only really seem to hunt things that they're supposed to. They love to hunt these fruit flies. They like to eat wax worms, which are injured and crawling away. They're not too fond of Mario worms yet, which is a bit of an issue, as I'll show you in a minute. But generally they're not actually aggressive towards most of the other insects in the tank. I have seen them have a little go at some other things, but they just generally have a bite and they both go their separate ways. There's never any stinging involved or swarming or actual aggression. It seems to be more of a hey you there, leave me alone situation, which is absolutely fine and natural. One other absolute delicacy for them are moths, which have hatched out of the cocoons from the waxworms. They absolutely love hunting these, and they are pretty good at catching. Here's a clip with a graphic warning, as it is a live feeding. I have also sped this footage up and cut off at the goriest part where they absolutely tear it to pieces. So enjoy this for a minute. Again, anyone that thinks this is unfair for the moth, this is a completely natural formicarium. It has pupated and cocooned itself within the vivarium and then hatched out to this moth, which has been caught. So again, this is a completely natural process. And we're going to cut off before it gets too gory. Again, this is the ant sugar cotton candy stuff that I get from the ant lady. I highly recommend you head over to the ant lady store and get some of this. My ants go crazy for it, my millipedes go crazy for it, everything seems to love it. I keep it in a constant stock in this ant tower that I got from Ant's Hood. So if you need an ant tower, head over to Ant's Hood. He does a really good deal on packs of 6, I believe they are. So head over to him and he can sort you out with these towers. They're really great for bigger species and smaller species. I use them for all my colonies at the moment, for water towers and for carbohydrates quite often, and I highly recommend using them for your larger colonies. Now, taking in all this food, the nest is always busy, and here's a shot of the nest entrance. It's clearly defined with that little hole entrance thing. As I say, it's always busy. Ants either coming or going in or out of it, taking things back, and it's really cool to watch. Nice that it's so exposed and visible, even though at the same time they've expanded the nest massively. They've now expanded it all the way down the back of the wooden log. They've expanded it taller and wider, and it's just getting quite large now. This being said, they do have at least 3 queens in the colony, so I am expecting a huge population boom soon, as we're already seeing mass amounts of empty cocoons getting dropped into the pond on a daily basis now. So that is really exciting. If you don't know, weaver ants like these Polyrhachis dives use their larvae to weave like a typewriter across what I like to call the scaffolding of wood and stuff that they pick up. All bits and bobs from around the vivarium: wood, sticks, mud, moss, anything they can pick up, and then they go across it with their larvae, laying layer and layer of silk into it until it's a solid structure, which is really cool actually. I've seen large beetles walking over it and it's not moving at all. It's a very strong structure. Again, all that footage has been sped up a bit. And moving on to our other inhabitants. I managed to see this earthworm one day, so I managed to get some footage of it as well. There's actually quite a few earthworms in there, which have become an important part of keeping this a healthy environment, as they eat the decaying matter and poop out fertilizer. I absolutely love these red tie flat millipedes. They're an arboreal species, which means they spend most of their time on the surface, and I get to watch them. What they're doing right now is the male is courting the female. He gets on her back and uses his legs to massage her back until she is accepting. This is a constant thing in tank at the minute. Quite often when I see them, that's what they're doing. They also spend a lot of time eating. They love their carbohydrates in the form of this sugar, candy, cotton candy stuff that I showed you earlier, and they also really enjoy the proteins that I put in as well. They pretty much eat everything. Also, one great thing about these is I fully trust them around the water. With most millipedes you have to take extra care with water because they're a bit stupid when it comes to water. They tend to drown themselves quite regularly. Whereas these millipedes quite happily come to the water's edge, come right to the pond and have a drink directly from the waters. They've done this so often and so regularly that I fully trust that they're not going to fall in and die anytime soon. If they do, it would be a completely freak random event and unexplainable, quite honestly. This is just one of the 3 species of millipede that we house in this vivarium, but it is, like I say, the most active and most visible, being on the surface most of the time, with the other millipedes being more nocturnal. We also have a thriving population of tropical grey isopods, and when I say thriving, I mean in the hundreds. They seem to be everywhere. They live in the mosses and under logs and under rocks and everywhere. Lots of big ones, lots of small ones, all over the place, and it's really great. They're a great clean-up crew. They help break down all of those decomposing pieces, and along with the springtails, they help reduce the mould outbreaks. As well as that, they're also quite partial to these jelly pots, as you can see here. Now, what I really like is I managed to zoom in and you can see it eating. Now, I've never seen an isopod actually eating or its mouth parts before, so I thought that was really cool. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. The only problem with having lots and lots of isopods is they can be quite aggressive towards each other and the other insects, although you wouldn't think it to look at them. They actually really love protein. Other things is these beetles. Now, who remembers the Mario worms that we put in the tank a few weeks back? We put in a total of 6 Mario worms, and so far 2 of these beetles have appeared and started wandering about the tank. Now that's really cool and really exciting, because that means that they've turned into pupa in the tank and hatched out into the beetles that are going to form and produce more Mario worms, which should give a good source of live food for the Polyrhachis dives as they grow. They spend a lot of time hidden, but they come out in the early afternoon and all through the evening, most evenings. And you can see them eating quite happily and getting on with all the other insects. The Polyrhachis dives do tend to bully them a little bit, occasionally having a little nip at one of their legs, but they're so large they don't really seem that bothered and they just walk off in the other direction. Again, I'm yet to see how it interacts with the crab. That might be another matter altogether. They're sort of the same size, and coming face to face the crab might decide to try and have it off. We'll have to wait and see. But as you can see here, the Polyrhachis dives really not bothered about sharing a meal with this beetle. As I said earlier, the trick to this is just ramming the tank full of food all the time, so there is no real need to fight live prey unless they just feel like being aggressive. There's much easier meals in the form of already dead insects. Now I'm going to show you what it's like after dark. I have this red light set up so that I can see without disturbing too many of the insects, red not being in most of their light spectrum. As you can see, there's another type of millipede that's come out to have some of this Mario worm. This is one of my giant olive millipedes. This is one of the more nocturnal species, and I only ever see them at night time. Also, I only ever see one at a time. This may mean that the female of the two could be pregnant, as they tend to burrow away for the gestation period before laying their eggs. Millipede eggs hatch into legless larvae, and they spend a few weeks in this state before they molt for the first time and grow their first little legs. Every time they molt, they gain a new segment or two and a few more legs. Some millipede species can even live between 7 to 10 years, so they can get pretty big, including these giant olive millipedes. We also have bumblebee millipedes somewhere, but honestly I haven't seen them for quite a while. When we put them in the tank, they were only very small, which means they're probably going to spend most of their time hidden until they get larger and more confident to venture out in the tank. Nighttime seems to bring out most of the insects, and it also seems to bring out the more aggressive side in the isopods, and they quite often fight between themselves over the scraps of food that have been left by the Polyrhachis dives. Now I'm going to leave it there for this episode. I'm sure I filled you with lots of knowledge and interesting little facts. In the next episode I'm going to be talking a little bit about the plants, ongoing things with the inhabitants of the tank, and a bit about the maintenance and technical side of it. And if you haven't already, feel free to hit that subscribe button. And as always, see you again, ant fans.